You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. I am thrilled to be joined again, of course, by Eric Michael Garcia, who is a senior Washington correspondent for The Independent and the author of their Inside Washington newsletter. And it'd be nice for us to get a little Inside Washington right now. Welcome back, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
I guess I want to start with something that just shocks me and just get your take. And I hope most Americans are shocked. I'm thinking of the Olympic athlete that they tried to pin the blame of the reflecting pool on, and are still trying to.
Yes.
The idea that our government would be happy taking away the freedom of an American, locking him up for 20 years for no reason except that the president is unwilling to let anyone question his competence, let anyone show that he's made a mistake. That for that, they're willing to take away an American's freedom. That's just an enormous shock. It's not, the rule of law, it's tyranny. And I wonder whether members of Congress of either party really grasp what's going on, and if any of them have said no to this.
Well, right now, Congress is supporting. Remember, Congress is out of session right now. They're on their August recess. But I think it's very similar to the Kilmar-Abrego Garcia case.
Yes.
Where they messed up court documents, they admit they messed up. And then but because the president can't back down from a fight. They can't admit to the public that they messed up, even if in court they did. I think it's incredibly revealing, and it also goes to the point that the actual that the D.C. Attorney's Office, the Office of the U.S. Attorney for District of Columbia, admitted that there was no vandalism. So I thought. It goes to the point that I always say, if you want to know what's actually going on with the Trump administration, look at the legal cases, not what they say.
Well, in both of those instances, and you're absolutely right to bring up Abrego Garcia, people's freedom was taken. Mm-hmm. Abrego Garcia was sent to CCOT, for gosh sakes. Yeah. He was shipped around the world. They brought him back and then tried him again on a trumped-up charge. Right? This is an administration that does not believe that Americans should be free, that believes that if they are embarrassed, they should put us in jail. And I don't know why Republicans who banged the table about freedom in America and around the world for generations have walked away from it so thoroughly and completely. But I don't see any indication on that side that they care about this anymore.
No, they don't. I mean, does anybody really want to be on the side of questioning the president? We've seen what happens when Republicans question the president, they lose their primaries. We saw this with Thomas Massie. We saw this with Bill Cassidy. Tom Tillis retired before he even could face a primary. So why would you if, the fate is losing your career? So.
Well, some of those reasons are the same reasons why they stood up to Pickett's charge in the Civil War, or why they landed on the beach in D-Day. You know what? They lost their lives doing it, but they were fighting for the kind of freedom that these Republicans are afraid to even raise their hand and notice. It's such a disgrace. I can't get my head around it.
Yeah. So, yeah, it does show just how the Republican Party is in complete and total fealty to the President of the United States.
Yeah. Okay. Well, related to that, after his appalling ascension to be the Attorney General of the United States, courtesy of the Republicans, Todd Blanche's first couple acts were to, give Donald Trump more immunity, and then to go out and do political campaigning.
Correct.
Something that is, a violation of the Hatch Act, but the law doesn't apply to them.
Right. I mean, the difficulty with the Hatch Act is it would actually require enforcing the Hatch Act. And we have kind of a double bind there, which is that the executive branch is in charge of policing itself. And unfortunately, there is no, external way to police that or to enforce it unless somebody brings it to court. And it just goes to the point that a lot of the, I guess you could say, the legal guardrails around the White House are kind of sort of on an honor system. That it's kind of dependent on, hey, people are actually going to play by the rules, are actually going to follow the law, and actually going to follow the rules. But what happens when the enforcement mechanisms are not independent and they are enthralled to the president as well? So
Well, there's supposed to be multiple mechanisms. One of them is Congress, but again, I have not heard a single Republican, even the ones who were reluctant to support Blanche, say anything about this. Nothing.
no, and I mean, again, it's because they're on recess. They don't want to talk about the president. They don't want to talk about what's going on, especially when the president's approval ratings are in the toilet right now. So
They may want to not want to talk about it, but there is not a papers width separation between them. And I don't think any good Democrat campaigning against them, any independent campaigning against them, is going to let them find any space. And I'm not sure they can, because then their base will turn on them.
right, exactly. I mean, even if the primaries are going to be over in like 2 weeks, but even then, you still need to be able to get your voters out in November. So unless you're living in a deep red district, you kind of need those voters. So
Yeah, I think Republicans are stuck. They are stuck with Trump, and they're
yeah.
stuck with him, and they're going to go down them because for just it's worth restating this. No Democrat is going to let them pretend they didn't enable Donald Trump for the last 2 years in every single vote, and no MAGA voter is going to let them have any space between them and Trump. So they are stuck with the man.
Yeah, they're kind of I don't think that they recognize that he's not locked in with them, they're locked in there with him, so to speak, tomorrow from Watchmen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about some of the things that Congress actually did.
Yeah.
They got a continuing resolution.
Hmm.
They couldn't pass budgets or appropriations, sorry, but
Yeah.
so they kicked the can down the road till after the midterms.
Yeah.
Is this a clean CR?
This is a clean CR. Yeah, there's no poison pills or anything like that. And we should say that Congress almost never passes budgets on time under either party. The last time they did was I think in like 1996 or something like that. So yeah, so I mean this is them kicking the can down the road, and it's a bipartisan American tradition. So
Yeah. All right. But the Democrats didn't get any constraints on ICE, and the Republicans
no,
got no constraints on voting.
correct. No poison pills on either side. So
Okay. Meanwhile, there's a $95 billion reconciliation
correct.
push happening. Talk about
Yes.
that.
Yeah, so the way that they're saying, the way that Republicans are saying this, the way that the House Speaker Mike Johnson was saying it before they went on recess, was they want to replenish the military stockpiles because we've used a lot of them in the war in Iran. Second of all, is they want to do some kind of relief, disaster relief, I guess maybe some farm relief. And then lastly, they want to do grant programs for the Save America Act. Now, remember, you can't actually pass policy in a budget reconciliation. It has to be related to the budget. So they're not going to be able to do voter ID programs. They're not going to be able to do any of those because those are policy. They have nothing to do with spending. But what they can do is they can do grant programs to incentivize states to adopt these. The one reason why there's a number of reasons why I'm skeptical that this could even pass, and even if it does pass, that'll even work. For one is that with what time do they have? They're on recess as we speak. They're campaigning. They're in their districts in their home states. And then when they come back, they're only going to be back for like 2 weeks before the midterm election, and then they've got 6 weeks to do budget reconciliation, to do appropriations bills, to do or kick the can again with the CR, and do and maybe do budget reconciliation all before a new Congress is sworn in, and then the clock starts back. So I always say, like, with what time? And then there's also just the fact that some Republicans, like Senator Lisa Murkowski, says she doesn't want to do a budget reconciliation as well. That a lot of people don't want to, and then they don't want to they don't want to tinker with the filibuster. So there's kind of a double bind. What they don't have time, they don't have the capacity. There still is internal division within their conference, and then there's also just the fact that, look, if there's a grant program for voter IDs, let's say, A lot of the states that would take them up on that already have voter ID programs. We're talking about states like Texas, we're talking about states in the South, Republican states. So there wouldn't be a lot of, there are no pot sweeteners for, I don't know, blue states to do voter IDs.
Right, right. But there is a way to tax blue states to reward red ones, which, is
Yes, yeah.
galling for people like me. All right, let's focus on one part, a couple parts of that. The replenishing the weapons part, which is the
Yes,
bulk of the money.
correct.
This Congress, both houses, voted, it's called a concurrent resolution,
Yes,
war powers resolution against
right,
the war in Iran.
correct.
Doesn't have the force of law,
No,
right? But it's their sense that this is a bad idea, bad war, it should stop.
yes.
If they then fund $95 billion to pay for the war, it makes that former vote a fraud.
Correct. Right, because again, as Speaker Johnson says, he's been saying for the last 6 months, we're not at war, right? 7 months, yeah. Wow. We're not 5 months. We're not at war right now. He says that this is a limited military operation, even though it's more fits and starts. There's hostilities and there's not hostilities. There's talk about the Strait of Hormuz is still not fully operational. So it's hard to justify, or hard to, I guess you could say, rationalize passing a $95 billion resolution to replenish the stockpiles when you said that this is not a war, and for the past 5 months they've argued that, well, we're just about done. We're just about defeating Iran. We've just about depleted their resources, and then they want to. I mean, look, sometimes you need to replenish the stockpiles. So you need to do that. But the whole argument was that this is going to be a very limited affair. This is going to be a very cheap affair, and that it would be a fairly, I guess you could say, uh, uh, non-difficult or incidental venture to degrade their military, prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, and regime change. And so far, none of that has happened. I should say the Iranian regime is still in place and arguably more hardline than it was, 5 months ago.
And given a weapon they didn't have 5 months ago, which is control of the strait. All right. So what do people say? I mean, when you report,
Yeah.
Speaker Johnson says, okay, so he says, but is there anybody on the other side of that saying, I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, the government sent an Article 51 letter to the United Nations explaining why we were at war with Iran. So you square that with your lie that we're not at war? Who is calling him out on his lies?
I mean, I think that Senator Tim Kaine is the big person on the Democratic side, and he was the same with Barack Obama when Barack Obama would be arming the Houthis. So credit to him, he does it with both sides, with his own side. I think that you're also seeing a few other people like Senator Jack Reed are also talking about that, the top Democrat on the Armed Services Committee. Thomas Massey's still gonna Thomas Massey. We got him for a few more months left. So God bless that crazy man. He's out of his mind, but he has principles, which is more than I can say for most people.
Yeah.
But he's obviously promoting these war powers resolutions. So there's a number of people who are pushing them. Senator Rand Paul, also a Republican from Kentucky, a libertarian Republican from Kentucky. So there are people. The difficulty is that there haven't been enough Republicans to say, to get this over the finish line, to get, like, they'll sometimes vote on the motion to proceed, and then they'll flip on the actual vote. They'll flip on the actual vote. There's the motion to proceed on legislation, and then there's the actual hard vote. And then even then, the president can still veto it. And again, we should add that war powers resolutions are not a formal declaration of war. They were, as you know, I mean, I'm not old enough to remember this because it was before I was born, but they were basically a way for Congress to express a strongly worded letter, so to speak, that we're dissatisfied with this, and have some kind of guardrails, even though that not really that many, but even then it shows that even the tiniest bit of a guardrail is not acceptable or not something that the White House that the Republican Congress wants to put in place on the White House.
Yeah. So I am old enough to remember because it was, Nixon's presidency. And one of the things that Congress did back then is interesting. Nixon started to bomb Cambodia.
Correct.
Cambodia was a peaceful country. It was not involved in the war.
Yes.
We were at war in Vietnam. He started to bomb Cambodia. But parenthetically, that led to the destabilization of that society, Pol Pot, and an incredible slaughter of human beings.
Correct.
It was a war crime. But Congress stopped it. How did they stop it? Not with a war powers resolution. They didn't have it at the time. They simply cut the funding.
Correct.
They said you cannot use the money for this. So Congress has power if it's willing to use it, but they're willing to abuse it, this crowd.
Correct. And we should add that Nixon had a Democratic-controlled Congress at the time, so they were much more willing to cut out the funding at the time.
Yeah. Well, it was a less partisan time.
Yeah, it was a much less partisan.
Yeah.
There were critics of the Vietnam War within the Republican Party at the time.
Yeah. Okay, let's change the subject a little bit. I want you to explain to folks what FinCEN is and why the change to the beneficial ownership rules of companies is a story. Is that something you followed?
Not as much, but it does show that like there is this kind of ability. I'm assuming you're talking about the World Liberty Financial thing,
I'm talking about, they said companies no longer have to say who owns them.
Basically, yes,
right?
And that is incredible. That's an incredible removal of transparency. My first job was covering financial regulation, so I always
it's a gift to money launderers.
Right, exactly. It's a huge gift to money launderers. It's a huge gift. It allows people, it's a way for, it's really bad for shareholders to know what's going on with their company. It's a really bad way for anybody who has investments in any particular company to not know what they're investing in. It really is a giveaway to companies, money launderers, anybody who to not know what's going on with their money. So
yeah, crazy. Absolutely crazy. All right. So when Congress is on vacation,
yes,
what occupies your days?
Oh boy, I do kind of get stir crazy a little bit here, but I am trying to get back on. I'm trying to get out on the campaign trail. I'm trying to go to Texas. I'm trying to go to Georgia.
Okay.
But I mean we've got a lot of primary elections that are going on right now. I was very closely watching what was going on in your neighboring state, Wisconsin, with the governor's race. That was something to watch. I've definitely been watching the South Carolina Republican Senate primary, where Lindsey Graham's sister won the runoff. Is going to make it to the runoff, I should say. So there still are some things, but the president keeps things a little. He's never off, so to speak.
Well, so yesterday, he told the world that pretty soon the United States is going to claim the Strait of Hormuz as a territory. Now, I guess we're not at war, but we're going to take a chunk of another country, as I guess we're going to do with Greenland, and make it part of the United States. Is he drunk? Is he sick? Well, like what is the? In what world does a president say things like that?
Again, it goes to the point that I think that they got overconfident with the after Venezuela with Maduro, with how I guess relatively smoothly it went, that they were just able to take Maduro and extradite him to the United States. But taking an international body of water is very different from extraditing someone and sending it to New York City. It's very different from I don't know how that would work out. Let's take into account that most of the oil that the United States gets is not from the Strait of Hormuz. We produce spoiler, we produce a lot of oil here, but we just
anybody, right?
We just consume more than we produce, but we also get a lot of oil from Canada, elsewhere. But it's like this is oil that goes to Japan, that goes to South Korea, that goes to a lot of our international allies. What legitimate claim do we have to the waters in the Strait of Hormuz when we're the ones who began the bombing of the Strait of Hormuz? So this is like geopolitics 101. What happens if you bomb Iran? They close the Strait of Hormuz. So
I mean, even if we have no legitimate claim, it's utterly illegal nonsense, but we also do not have the military capacity apparently to take it. right?
We
Because it's narrow waterway and you got one country on one side and another country on another side, and we're a couple thousand miles away. Now, maybe you could station ships there forever. I mean, I can't imagine
I
the
guess
size
so.
of the operation it would take to occupy hundreds of miles of Iran forever.
Right, right. It would be virtually impossible. It would require a lot. It would require way more ships than we had the capacity to. We would have to be moving a lot of ships from the Pacific, from elsewhere, to relocate there. So it's not logistically possible to do something like that. I
Right.
guess I guess it's Trump just thinks it's as easy as calling the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, but we don't. That's not how it works.
So while we're on the topic of our commander in chief who doesn't know how it works, he has said we need to redesign the Ford class aircraft carriers to move the tower, and we have to redesign all our aircraft carriers to put back in steam
Yeah,
catapults rather than the electromagnetic ones that we use. Like, uh, and he's going to order them to do these billion-dollar changes that make us less strong.
yeah. Again, I guess it just goes to him being very nostalgic for the olden days, but without any logical explanation. I mean, you can say the same thing about the Warthog jets.
Well,
So
next thing you know, we'll have bayonets.
yeah, yeah, I know. Horses and bayonets. So yeah, these aren't going to be more secure. I think that Trump just likes the way that they look, but okay, sure, why
Okay.
not?
Well, I can think of a lot of reasons why not, including that lives are at stake.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Carolyn Levitt,
Yes.
talk about like what's that? Did she just leave because she had another kid, or is she fed up?
Yeah,
What's the
that's a
scuttlebutt, and who's taking her place?
So my coworker, my colleague Andrew Feinberg, my White House reporter Andrew Feinberg, I'm sure you saw the story that she announced that she was leaving, and so abruptly that they didn't have a replacement. Now, look, she has two kids under the age of 3. Being a working mom is tough. My mom had me around the same age that Carol Levitt is, so like
Yeah, it's
let's
tough.
let's let's have some grace. But I think it does show that there isn't a lot of coordination right now in the administration. And then also as people just to be completely fair and to be completely honest, that White House press secretaries are kind of the political whipping boys. They go through presidents tend to go through press secretaries pretty quickly. I think Bush had 4. Uh, Obama had like 3. Joe Biden had 2. So it's not like it is a very very difficult job. It has a finite shelf life. Your job is to take all the javelins that are meant for the president and catch them from the press and take them. But I think it does show that this is an administration where a lot of people are getting ready to exit, or there's an expectation that Democrats are going to take back the House and the Senate, House and maybe the Senate. That's still up in the air. So it's time for a little bit of a readjustment. So
Um, you said the job of the president's press secretary is to take incoming flack from the press, but that's actually not the job. The
yeah,
job is to try within the bounds of to get press questions, because press is
yes,
legitimate in America, to get their questions answered so
right,
they can do their job.
right,
And I don't believe that's the job Carolyn Levitt did. I believe
no,
she, right? So I don't know why we have a presidential press secretary. I don't know why we have presidential press conferences. And I'm guessing that the best reporting that you've done in Washington had nothing to do with anything you learned in a presidential brief ever.
a former mentor of mine, who was a former Washington bureau chief at the AP, told me that that it's that like the best report, that like the press briefings are for suckers. Um, you got there's a lot of performance there. There's the semblance of reporting there, but really, it's a very choreographed kind of dance, so to speak, which is like everybody's at their desk. That there's a little bell that says like, okay, time for the press briefing. Everybody goes in their seats. There's assigned seating. People do the question. The press secretary does the open. Everybody's questioning that. That's kind of why I don't like going to the White House. And I should say I didn't like going to the White House under Biden either. It's just not my bag. I prefer the Capitol. I prefer going. I prefer there's a little bit more freedom of movement. But yeah, there's a lot of. I mean The White House, I think, again, this might be a little controversial, might be surprising to some people. I actually don't think we should televise the briefings at all. I think that
I agree with you.
I think it
I agree with you.
incentivizes both the press and the administration to perform rather than to inform. So if it were up to me, I would send the interns at the news outlets and let the reporters report. So
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's the same way in the Pentagon.
yeah, exactly.
Worse.
Worse. Well, yeah. Well, even at the Pentagon, they're used. Now they've severely restricted the movement of people at the Pentagon, where there used to be a very vibrant, lively Pentagon press corps that has now been significantly curtailed under Secretary Hegseth.
All right. Well, what did you make of the Fauci show?
Dr. Fauci and all that. I think that what it really is Rand Paul has always kind of had a bug to pick with Dr. Fauci. Look, were there some mistakes made in COVID? Yes, of course there were, but it was a once in a lifetime novel virus, so a lot of it was guesswork. A lot of this was going back and forth and kind of figuring out what was the right thing to do. But a lot of it really just goes back to this is kind of somebody is multiple people said this, so I'm not saying anything new, but a lot of this is just revenge for the way that Trump feels that the quote unquote the deep state wronged him, and this feeling that COVID might have cost Trump the election, when in fact what I've said before, and I've said this multiple times, if Trump had just worn a mask and he had told people we're sending everybody a mask during COVID, and they had done another round of stimulus, Trump probably wins re-election with 400 electoral votes.
If he'd done his job,
if he
didn't do the job.
Yeah, exactly. So if a pig had wings, it'd be a unicorn. So
Yep. I am interested in the midterms. I think enormous amount is riding on the midterms.
Absolutely.
But you're in Washington, and so you're forgiven for the sin of focusing on the next presidential election already.
No, I'm a sicko. I love midterms. So,
but you wrote about the presidential race a little bit. So let's spend a few minutes and talk about what that city is thinking about the presidential race.
Sure. I mean, let's talk about the obvious one first, and let's talk about the more variable ones. So I think it's pretty obvious on the Republican side, it's going to be J.D. Vance versus Marco Rubio. I think everybody within Trump world and outside of Trump world acknowledges that that's going to be the Republican primary. Maybe some other people.
How do they decide that? In primaries, or does Trump build another cage on the White House and have them just duke it out and he goes thumbs up, thumbs down?
I'd actually prefer that. I think that'd actually be hilarious.
They're vying for his vote because that's the one that's going to matter.
I actually think that would be. I would actually pay a subscription to watch that. That would be fantastic. Get JD and Marco in the gym, get them work out a little bit, and then 6 months later duke it out. But so there's that. But I think the Democratic side is more interesting to me for now because look, Democrats are 2 for 3 against Trump, or 1 for 3 against Trump. They lost 2 for 3. And I think that they really are trying to figure out what comes next. Now, I think that and what they want to be and what's the message they want to send to the American people that they want to give to people post-Trump. So first and foremost, of course, there's going to be a new primary calendar. Let me see if I can remember right. It's going to be South Carolina, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Michigan, and Virginia. Those are the 6 primary states. I think that it's pretty obvious that for now, whether she runs or not, Kamala Harris is the front runner. If you look at polling, if you look at public approval ratings, she's the front runner. But then it gets a little dicey because remember, Kamala Harris has never won a competitive primary for president. She dropped out before Iowa, if you remember, in 2019. Mm-hmm. Then it comes down to who the other ones are and what their lanes are. I think the big question everybody's asking right now is whether Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is going to run for president or whether she's going to decide to run for Senate. I think she raised a lot of eyebrows when she announced she was freezing her eggs. I was actually on Polish radio earlier this week, and they were talking about that. So I think that there's a real legitimate question, especially given how many socialists and progressives are winning in primaries, whether she could mount a challenge. Then there's the other ones. There's your Pete Buttigieg's, your Andy Bashir's. Can they muster up enough name recognition and name ID and get enough people to vote for them? Otherwise, that couldn't. Could they get which coalitions would back them? I think it's pretty obvious for now that not because she is an African American woman, but because she's the establishment favorite, the most recent nominee, that Kamala Harris will do very well with Black voters of the South. But other than that, we don't know. But then, a candidate like AOC could probably do really well in states like New Mexico and Nevada because of the Hispanic support there. But also, those are states with heavy organized labor. Michigan is another example of a state with organized labor. So I think that the new calendar is going to scramble a lot of ways that presidential candidates will otherwise campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I like the new calendar. Among the reasons I like the new calendar is that it allows the diversity of the Democratic coalition
Yes.
to pick its leaders, where the old ones really didn't.
Yeah, right. I mean, prior to that, it was Iowa, which is
Iowa, New Hampshire,
very white.
right?
New Hampshire, which is whiter. Then you have Nevada, which has a lot of Latinos. It has like 30% Latino population, 20% Black population. So it's diverse.
Mhm.
And then you've got then you had South Carolina. And now this one, it's like it starts with the base of the Democratic Party, older Black voters in South Carolina. Then you've got states like Nevada, like I said, a lot of Latino voters. New Mexico, which its state constitution is also in Spanish and English. And then you have a state like Michigan, which I think is very representative of the country, though I think Illinois is more representative of the country because you have Black voters, Hispanic voters, Asian American voters, Muslim voters, your old white working class voters, your guys who work for the UAW, so you got that, and then you've got Virginia, so
Yeah.
which also people forget. People think of Virginia as very white. It has a large Black population. It has a very large Hispanic population. It has a growing Asian American population.
Well, but Virginia is an enormous amount of Virginia is suburban Washington voters.
Yes, very
Yeah.
much so. Yes.
I mean, just in terms of population. Yeah, I mean, Michigan certainly had an interesting primary season.
It very much did, yes, between Abdul El-Sayed and Haley Stevens. Now, I think that we've seen the polling. There was an internal poll that came out today from Senate Majority PAC showing Abdul El-Sayed up by 3 against Mike Rogers, but then there was a Fox News poll earlier I think like 2-3 days ago showing Mike Rogers beating Abdul El-Sayed. That one's going to be a very interesting one to watch. I'm going to be watching that one.
I just spent a few days in the state, and I went up. I wanted to talk to people in Antrim County.
Okay.
Antrim County is where the fake election thing in 2020 got started.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I think Abdullah said has a lot of work to do.
He does.
It's a really important thing that Democrats are going to have to look in the mirror and be honest with each other about, that the progressive movement, the DSA movement, is largely college educated white folks, largely. And it hasn't resonated with Black or white working class voters.
Right.
Right. And so Syed's work has nothing to do with Israel Palestine, which is like what all the press is about. It has everything to do with saying to Black voters in Detroit, I know this movement that I'm part of stood on the sidelines and didn't vote for Kamala Harris, but that's then. This is now. It's a different era, and I really do understand the challenges you're facing, and I really will represent you in the United States Senate. But he's got to sell that, and he's got to mean it. He's got to listen to people. So the future of the Democrats in Michigan depends on Black voters in Detroit.
It absolutely depends on Black voters in Detroit. Look, he's going to get young people out in Washtenaw County, which is where Ann Arbor is, and Ingham County, which is where East Lansing is, and Traverse City. But it's gonna depend. He's gonna have to spend a lot of time in Black churches. in Detroit and in Wayne County. Now, he did better, I think, than expected in Wayne County, but still, Haley Stevens overwhelmingly won Wayne County, which is right where Detroit is. So it's gonna be the most important thing to convince Black voters that he's on their side, that he's going to look out for their interests. I think it's one of the most interesting stats I think that a lot of people that I've looked at for the past few months since May is the increase in Black voter turnout in primaries ever since the Calais decision.
Yeah.
If you look at Black voter turnout in Alabama and in Georgia and in Mississippi, it has been astronomical since the
Right.
Supreme Court.
I mean,
Right.
Black voters for most of American history, Black Americans have been the champion of voting rights, have
Correct.
fought for it harder than anybody, and are not going to let it go. I mean, it's a fabulous thing.
Right. I mean, I remember I was in Atlanta in 2024. I was out in Stone Mountain, Georgia, and there was this old Black lady. I was talking with her about early voting, and she says, "Look, my family died and bled for this, And I was just
Yep.
like, and I realized, oh yeah, I'm in Atlanta. This is where Dr. King is. This is where John Lewis is. Like, of course.
Yep.
And yeah, this is.
It's not lost on voters in Detroit.
It's not lost voters on Detroit. Remember, there were race riots. There were riots after Dr. King's murder in Detroit. In Detroit as well. There was that great movie Detroit a few years, like about a decade ago. So there was civil unrest. There was police violence in Detroit as well. So it wasn't just in the South where
Yep.
Black voters
Absolutely.
faced. Look, I was born in Chicago. I know about the history with Chicago as well, and police violence and police brutality there. But yeah. So I think that this is going to be that Black voters very much can and should flex their muscle. They should recognize and I think that Dr. El Sayed has to convince them that he is going to be the voice on voting rights in the
Yep.
United States Senate.
Yep.
He's going to be the voice on Black maternal health when he goes to Washington. He's going to be the voice on criminal justice reform.
Yes,
if
and
communities
saying to Harmeet Dillon, what you've done to the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department is a crime. Yeah.
Correct. Yes, it is going to be convincing Black voters that he will be their best advocate, even if he's a Arab American Muslim man named Dr. Abdul El Sayed, and that's not to say that Black voters don't know. There's a lot of Black Muslims, but it's going to be, but it is going to be saying, yes, we do, like, I'm not as steeped in this community as you would like, but I'm going to be your biggest champion when I come to Washington, and Mike Rogers isn't.
And on the contrary, Mike Rogers' path is, I think, more difficult because what I found in talking to those Trumpers up in Antrim County was they've soured on the man.
Yes.
They still hate us, by the way.
Yes,
they
yes.
still are not going to vote for in a million years. They are not going to vote for Dr. El Sayed, but they might stay home.
Right, because they see Mike. A, he lost, and a year that Trump won Michigan. B, there's also just the fact that they don't. Rogers is still very much a pre-Trump GOP Republican. Now, look, he now has the Mar-a-Lago tan from living in Florida a little bit. He now, posts
But
AI
that makes
photos.
him feel less legit because
Right.
people remember him, and then they say, "Wait a minute, which guy is this?" This is an era where authenticity matters, and if you're just going to be Trump's agent, it's just going to be harder.
Right. I mean, as a friend of mine likes to say, Trump is simultaneously the most dishonest and the most honest president we've ever had. And like initially I didn't get what he's saying. That I was like, oh yeah, Trump is doing a lot of the things that he said he was going to do in 2024. But then he'll just lie about a lot of other stuff. But
Nixon said famously, "I am not a crook." But
Right.
if he had said, but the lesson in retrospect is if he'd said, "I am a crook" and be proud of it, he might have gotten away with it.
He might have. But the point is that it looks when Mike Rogers kind of wears the MAGA suit, it's very ill-fitting, so to speak. It doesn't, the hems aren't working, so to speak. So I like what I would say is that I think that he has to convince, he simultaneously, he's now doing this thing where he says, look, Democrats, if you want to make the jump over here, it's more, the water's warm. But at the same time, doing that means you have to make a few concessions. And are those concessions enough to, or are those concessions going to be too much for MAGA to say, well, this guy's a rhino, this guy's not going to stand
Have
with
you
president?
ever seen a concession that MAGA likes?
No, I have
No.
not seen a concession that MAGA likes. No, that's the whole point of MAGA.
Yeah.
Fight, fight, fight. Never back down. Never apologize.
No.
Concession. Like I think if I went to Wrigley Field, they wouldn't even buy concessions. So
Right. That's exactly right. Now, this is the party that thinks testosterone shots are a military policy.
Right, exactly. So, but that that it's somehow evil to give them to trans people. But the thing that I would say is that there really is that Rogers has his, both of them are going to have trouble with their own base and convincing people. But I think that the main question that El Sayed has to be getting on his knees and praying for is that Michigan is one of the few states that still has straight ticket voting. So he's just got to hope that a good chunk of Michiganders just say, you know what, I got a busy day, straight ticket, put in the box,
Yeah.
and go on
And
about their.
black voters have more experience
Yes,
than Assad's base does.
correct. Yes,
and they're not, I think they are fully aware of the stakes right now.
yes,
And
yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the other thing to take into account is that, and this isn't to knock DSA or anything like that, Detroit isn't, Michigan isn't New York City. New York City, you can basically walk blocks. You could get your DSA friends to go walk blocks with a clipboard and everything like that. Detroit, I mean, Michigan is very spread out. It's not just Detroit.
Right.
So it's very difficult to, you got to get in a car or you got to drive tons of miles, log in tons of miles. It's not going to be what campaigning for Zohran Mamdani was, or campaigning for your local DSA candidate was. You actually have to get in the car, talk to people. It's not going to be as easy. So,
yeah, all of these things are playing out. They play out in one way in Manhattan. God
yes.
bless Manhattan. But they're playing out for the whole country in this part of the country I love, the Great Lakes region, in
Right.
Michigan, in Wisconsin, in very interesting ways that are going to determine what political party the Democrats are coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I think right now the Democratic Party is still going through an identity crisis. So, as every party does after they lose, the Republican Party became significantly more conservative when they were out of the White House last time, and in the past, Democrats toggled a little bit to the middle when they were out of the White House during Reagan's presidency. They became a little more progressive when Democrats when they were when Bush was in the White House. So right now they need to figure out what they want to do. But I mean, one of the things that I just noticed with people, when I talk with people, wherever I go, whether they're Republican, Democrat, whatever, is people are still kind of just tired. The most informative discussion I had that made me think that Democrats were in trouble was I was in Milwaukee during the 24 and 24 DNC, and I was a bar with a few African American voters, and they were like, "Look, this beer cost me $7," and I was like, "Okay, if somebody from Wisconsin's complaining about the cost of beer, there's a problem."
Yeah.
And then also they were just like, rent is high as hell, but they're also just like, I just don't trust Trump. Like, I think a lot of people right now, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, whether you're neither, people are just kind of tired, and they just want kind of just like, can we get some stability and some feeling and security more than anything else?
We need it. That's got to be our last word, because I've just looked and we have run past time.
Oh my God.
I can't believe it. I love talking to you. The time flies by. Let's do it again. Thank you so much.
Take care.